About over 20 years ago, my brother immigrated to New Zealand, or 25 years ago actually, and in 1981 we came the first time to New Zealand, and you know, as a first-time tourist we would zigzag the whole islands down, and but we crossed Marlborough, and Marlborough was, you know, beautiful as ever. It was January, and everything was in fruit, and there were peaches and apples and apricots, lots of stone fruit. And Hans, when we went through, he said, wow, that would be really good for grapes. And Hans always said, what do you think, you know, shouldn't we have a second vineyard here in Marlborough and buy some land? It's so cheap here. Would be no problem to do 2 vintages, one, you know, March, April, and one in October in Switzerland. And I actually was the one who said, nah, that doesn't work out, you know, can you imagine something at the other end of the world? No. Hans told my brother when something's coming up here on the river and the hot spot of the valley, then to call him and let him know. And then this place came up for sale, and so we put an offer in, and it was accepted. And everything had to go really fast, so we didn't have time to come out because that was about in August, and then until, preparing vintage. And we bought that unseen, but we knew, you know, obviously we would be in contact, and we knew exactly where it was. And this was where all the farmers said that's the hot spot of the valley. This also has been the oldest orchard. And so we bought. The reason actually why Hans wanted to have this hotspot is because he wanted to plant everything he couldn't plant at home. And whilst the main grape variety, or main red grape variety in Switzerland is Pinot Noir, and Hans did that for a lifetime, and probably could, you know, it was no art for him anymore. He was really interested to do a Bordeaux because we love Bordeaux. That's really where our wines stand, next to their French cousins. For actually not for the lover of New World wines, but for the lover of actually traditional French wines. And the sommelier, you know, they have a feast and they can say, look, instead of going to the Burgundy, I have something new. Would you like to be surprised with something special? And then of course they say, oh, but that is a very good vintage. And they say, yeah, it is. And what would you think? And they all, of course, think it's from France. And then they say, no, it's not. And then they have really problems where. But the last thing, of course, they will ever think of is New Zealand. Yeah. So, of course, the sommelier has, you know, the time of his life. You know, we do everything the same than we did back in Switzerland, where Hans grew, well, his family grew grapes since the 14th century. Michel Béthane, like the French Parker, he wrote that book, The Greatest Wines of the World, and he's a big fan of our Pinot Noir, but he said there is no Viognier outside of France who has achieved that subtlety and ripeness and like, you know, the Viognier from Hans Herzog. And we had, in 2004, we had the professors from the Wine University of Montpellier coming out. Obviously, you know, they're responsible for the grape variety Viognier in France. That's the main, you know, Côte-du-Rhône, Rhône Valley. And they were really amazed, because the problem with Viognier is that it loses the acidity already in the vineyard. It's a grape variety. If it gets too hot, it loses acidity, and probably a high percentage of all Viognier have added acidity, which always makes it, you know, just not really balanced. But the great climate in Marlborough is its really sunny days, hot days, the cool nights, keeps all this natural acidity up throughout the ripening, the whole ripening period. So we still pick the Viognier with a good acidity. And this is what you can really also feel in the wine. It's all there, you know, the beautiful fruit characters, but not like, you know, some of the Australian Viogniers or the cheaper Viogniers, which will get like plummy character like this He was really, really interested to do a Bordeaux because we love Bordeaux. And we planted even some Cabernet Sauvignon, which I think from 10 years we had one vintage. The rest we burned, I mean we made schnapps out of it. one in 10 years would get ripe. And so we planted that Spirit of Marlborough, and this is the only wine who has also a fantasy name, because that was really the spirit which brought us here to be able to do a great Bordeaux. And obviously this is not a variety you will find in Marlborough at all, because the money is of course in Sauvignon Blanc, which with huge tons as yields and machine harvested. That's the typical investor to Marlborough. This was really Hans's challenge, and we're really happy. It has become really a classic wine. We go quite a long way for this wine. Not only is it from 2 to 3 years in French oak, in French barriques, but then we age it for another 2 years in the bottles. I don't know, did you show them the different vintages?
Right. Yeah.
It comes for us at a huge cost, because for a small winery having such a big amount of wine, not be able to sell. But as I told you, our wine is mostly sold in the restaurant industry, and of course nowadays when you sell a wine, it goes straight on the wine list and customer order it and drink it. So we want to make sure, because we are not yet, Mutter Rothschild or Godes Tunnel, who can they raise normally the wines after 4 years, but then everybody knows you're not going to drink it, you put it in the cellar. But I mean, we're not there, so we have to make sure that when the wine hits the wine list, it has to be ready to drink. And this is why our current release is 01, because we don't want to compromise this wine. So this is our most costly wine because of aging.